In the middle of darkness, the members of the Brotherhood of Night gathered under a big mango tree with its leaves littered everywhere on the ground. The crickets and creeping insects were all singing in their holes while the gentle breeze of the night blew around the vicinity. The Brotherhood of Knights has about 20 old members with the new ones who are getting ready to be initiated into the Brotherhood. Different men of different bodybuilding and fitness stood walking around the altar at the midst of their gathering on a long wooden table. Those men wore different red wrapper tied on their chest, which length reaches their legs. Most of the men had hairy chests and big pot belly pushing their wrapper forward. They held a green mango leaf in their mouth with their two eyes colored with a white chalk, making them look like a monster. They walked around the wooden altar carrying different wooden statues on it. A wooden statue of a man with 3 eyes, 2 in his side and 1 in his forehead. His face looked a bit scary due to the extra eyes, making it to look like a monster's. The statue was painted completely in pepper red. The leader of the Brotherhood, Lord Onidas, sat before the altar on a big and tall wooden fancy chair. He held a long metal staff with a sculptured snake at the top of the staff while he sat down looking at his followers dancing and moving around the altar singing some diabolical songs invoking the powers of their gods through their Lord Onidas. Onidas, a dark tall man who is also huge and thick like a mini giant. He wore a pepper red wrapper tied on his chest with some that looks like a crown on his head when she stood up. The crown was made of fabric materials. He stood up, held his staff and addressed XGBBHD his followers. Hello great men of the night, gather, let's invoke the spirit of our gods to come down and bless us with all the riches of this world. Onidas shouted, dragging his voice while he looked up above to the mango tree with his hands spread open on both sides. In unison the members of the Brotherhood shouted looking at Lord Onidas with their hands open on both sides. O Lord of the Night, we gather together before you this night with our offerings, gods of the night blessings us with all the riches of this world. Onidas shouted. His eyes were closed while he stood before the altar. His hands were shaking, while his lips mumbled on each other aggressively. He paused, opened his eyes and spoke to his followers. Repeat what I just say now. The members of Brotherhood of Night repeated what he said while they began to walk round the altar. Afterwards, Onidas walked to the altar and picked a sharp knife from the table. Onidas walked towards the base of the big mango tree. He untied a male big goat, dragged it to the altar and placed it on the goat on the altar. 2 members of the Brotherhood hurriedly came around and assisted him. They placed the big black goat on altar, held its neck and slaughtered it with a sharp knife. The blood of the goat was fetched in a big calabash and kept on the table. Afterwards Emeka and Ebuka were ushered into the midst of the Brotherhood. Emeka and Chidi, who were standing outside the midst members, walked in and stood before them. Emeka and Chidi are good friends in the same age grade. They have been good friends since childhood. They went to the same secondary school, got admitted in the same university but studied different course. Chidi is dark in complexion, tall and lanky. He has a skinny face too while wearing a low-cut hair. He wore a black jean trouser and a blue big shirt while he stood before the altar of the gods of the night. Chidi and Emeka were given the blood of the goat in the calabash to drink after some incantations from Lord Onidas. Emeka hurriedly collected the calabash, moved it to his mouth and drank a big quantity. He gave Chidi but she was reluctant. Chidi kept staring at the blood in a calabash. This is something he hasn't done in his life before. Emeka tapped Chidi's shoulder and murmured, drink the blood, Ene. Don't you want to be rich? He shouted. Chidi shivered. He moved the calabash gradually to his mouth, shaking and sweating. He took a sip that took him minutes to swallow. He kept the blood in his mouth. Lord Onidas walked to them and gave them a warm hug. Welcome to the Brotherhood of the Night. Get ready to enjoy the riches of this world. He paused, walked back to his seat and continued, but you have to sacrifice your mothers, but if she is not alive, you should bring to this altar the one you love so much for the ritual sacrifice. He said. No. No. This can't be possible. I can't sacrifice my mother. Oh. Chidi murmured bitterly in his mind. Emeka nodded his head, affirming what the Lord said to him without having a second thought about it. Chidi stood at their midst, lost while thinking about what the leader said to him. Blood of his mother. Emeka, I can't kill my mother for money. Oh, Emeka, you know how I love my mother so much now. This money I want to make is for me and her. Oh. Emeka, I don't think I will continue this quest to make money. I can't sacrifice my mother. Chidi said, infuriated, looking at Emeka, his friend who sat beside him on a blue fancy plastic chair with 4 metal legs outside Chidi's late father's house compound, beside the empty carport opposite the big black gate at the exit of the house. The compound is a very large compound, of that of a rich businessman, with an old water fountain in the middle of the compound. Different types of flowers were planted round fence wall of the compound, both inside and outside. The fence walls are height about 6 feet high, with barbed wires hung on the top of the fence. Chidi's father's house is a 1-story duplex. Spacious and comfortable, with 7 bedrooms, 2 living rooms, 4 restrooms and 2 kitchens. The white paint on the walls of the buildings were already peeling off from the wall, especially that of the ground floor. Chai, like you want to die, oh Chidi, my hand no dey there. Oh, have you forgotten what Lord Onidos said to us about going back on what the gods request from us? Emeka said, looking at Chidi, who sat beside him, confused and disturbed. Chidi's facial expression displayed his pains in what the gods requested from him. He placed his hands on his head, stood up from his plastic chair and walked towards the black entrance gate of the house. Emeka stood up and followed him behind. Emeka, what about you? Who will you sacrifice since your mother is dead? Chidi asked Emeka while they walked to Emeka's house. Emeka stopped walking, went close to Chidi's ear and whispered in his ear, I will sacrifice Kate, my girlfriend. Oh. Emeka said with his full chest, without feeling any remorse. Chidi walked into the black entrance gate in Emeka's house while Emeka followed him behind. Emeka opened his room door, beside the passage leading to the living room. They entered and sat on the bed. Emeka went to the kitchen, opened the 2 compartments freezer. He took a green bottle of alcohol drink, carried a glass cup and walked back to his room. Chidi, abeg, drink this cold drink, make you cool your temper. Emeka said, handing the drink and glass cup to Chidi, who sat on a wooden chair beside a window in the right side of the room. Chidi objected the gesture, but after much persuasion from Emeka, Chidi collected it and took a shot in his glass bottle. Afterwards, he dropped the glass cup on a table beside the wooden bedstand and went back to his seat. Chidi sat down, looking at Emeka, who was sitting on the edge of his bedstand. He asked, Emeka, are you not afraid to kill your girlfriend? But Kate has shown you great love and support now. Emeka replied him, Chidi, I know, but I need to get out of this life of poverty. Oh, see my sisters and father suffering now. Emeka's father was once a rich businessman. He lost his wealth treating his late wife, who suffered from breast cancer before she died. After her death, things became worse for them. All his business went down to the drain. Since over 10 years, even to eat has been a great problem. Last year, Emeka's father got diagnosed with kidney problems, but it is still in its early stage. All this pressure made Emeka strong and determined to make money in any way to save his family. Chidi sat dumbfounded, looking at Emeka. He could say anything for minutes, wondering when his best friend Emeka developed that kind of strong mindset to even take away someone's life. Eventually, Chidi beckoned on Emeka to escort him to see Lord Onidos to ask if he can use his girlfriend for the sacrifice. About 3 p.m. in the evening, Chidi and Emeka met at the Naidu Junction. Lord Onidos' mansion isn't far from the junction. They took a drop. The tricycle took them to his house and dropped them at the gate entrance of the house. They walked into the house. It was a wooden-story glass house. A fancy water fountain was installed at the middle of the large compound that looks like a football field. The interlock floor were even painted and designed in different shapes. Flowers were planted round the house with multiple expensive fleets of luxurious cars in his carport at the right corner of the compound. The security guard at the gate took them to see Lord Onidas after he told them about them. "Good day, Lord Onidas. May you live forever," Emeka said, loudly hailing him. Afterwards, he continued looking at the expensive interiors decorations in the house. "Lord Onidas, please, can I have a use my girlfriend instead of my mother?" Chidi said while kneeling before him. Lord Onidas sat on a high fancy chair painted in coated gold color. "No. You can't. No, you can't. You must do what the gods want from you," Onidas shouted in a furious tone. Afterwards, he sent them away from his presence. Chidi walked away sweating and whimpering. Emeka followed him behind.